Welcome in to First Things First. I'm Sarah Cusack filling in for Jenna Wolf. That's Chris Broussard. That's Doug Gottlieb filling in for Chris Carter and Nick Wright. How are you guys doing? Are you sad that it's Friday?
Totally.
And we're not going to see each other tomorrow morning at 3 a.m.?
You guys are great. You've been carrying me all week.
My back is kind of tired. To be completely honest, I'm glad you admitted it here on national TV.
Riding coattails. We start with Lamar Jackson. Football was back. His preseason debut against the Bears. The good, he was elusive in the pocket, managed to throw a touchdown pass. The bad, he only completed 40% of his passes and threw an interception. Baltimore did win 17-16. Doug, what was your first impression of Lamar Jackson?
I was disappointed. I was disappointed. And I wasn't disappointed in the 4 for 10. I don't want to, I'm not a result-oriented viewer. It's a process.
Preseason, right?
Really, anyway, even preseason and regular season for a rookie starting quarterback who played 3 years at Louisville, it's more the process. We know he's a great athlete. The questions are, is he a great quarterback? Or has he evolved, or has he begun the process of evolution as from a college quarterback to a pro quarterback? And again, only one game in, I think the answer is no. Look, I thought the Ravens did a really smart thing. They run a bootleg first time he touches the football to get him outside the pocket, to show his athleticism, to kind of get his juice going. But for the most part, not always, but for the most part, every time he saw pressure, he dropped the football and he started to run away instead of stepping up into the pocket and looking like a quarterback. I mean, today is the 41st birthday of Tom Brady. Tom Brady raised a pregnant woman, came in third. That's how slow he is, okay? But Lamar Jackson, who's a much more adept athlete, is not nearly as athletic within the pocket. He gets back there, he sees pressure, and all of a sudden he goes and runs. And even when he does throw the ball on the move or steps up in the pocket, his footwork then isn't driving the football. It doesn't look like there's been much refinement at all from the college quarterback to the young pro quarterback. It's really early, but I was disappointed. I would have thought I'd seen more, especially considering some had raved about his training camp performance.
I wasn't disappointed. I mean, look, it's 2 weeks into training camp. He's still literally looking in the mirror and practicing his play calls in the huddle. That's how raw this guy is. What I did see is I think he's a quarterback. He's not a wide receiver like a lot of people have said. Right now, he's a quarterback. And, you know, as you said, his instinct is to run. The first 3 times he touched the ball, he ran. One, as you said, was called a bootleg. The other next 2 plays, he ran as well. He did get a first down, but he settled down as the game went on, and obviously he threw the ball more. Not that well, but you could see he's got really good arm strength. But he's going to have to, you know, get used to sitting in that pocket and throwing the ball and not resorting to his instincts to run, because he's not going to stay healthy. I mean, he didn't take any real licks yesterday, but he didn't slide. He didn't run out. He ran out of bounds once, but still got tackled. He got hit. He will not last. He's 212 pounds. Any running quarterback can get hurt, but especially a guy that slight. So that was something I saw. But overall, you know, I thought I wasn't disappointed like you were, Doug. I thought he showed some things. I didn't expect too much, you know, this soon from him, and I do think he's got a long way to go. So, you know, I thought it was okay.
From this aspect, I think was the disappointing part. You look at a couple of the early plays where he drops back to pass, and he sees the pass rushers coming, and instead of stepping up and almost overcompensating for the narrative about him wanting to run, right? Because that's kind of what he's done in terms of, I don't want to run the 40. I don't want people to think of me as an athlete, to think of me as a quarterback. I would have thought that he would hold the ball a little bit too long, trying to make every read, trying to go through his progression. Instead, I mean, I disagree. I thought he looked like a wide receiver playing quarterback or a running back playing quarterback. That's what they look like in college.
He threw the ball. Okay.
It's not that he can't throw it. It's not that he can't throw it. It's that he doesn't drive the football. He doesn't step up into the pocket. And even some of the throws that were complete, they're a little bit off target. Accuracy is paramount. Yeah. Pocket presence is paramount. And those things were missing.
But you expected that
But
this soon?
That's what, like, do you think John Harbaugh after the game, he said number one task we told him was to operate the offense and get guys lined up, the play calls, get your snap counts up. Like, do you think in that sense there's too much stock being put into this first experience, and given how aggressive the Bears defense was?
Look, I don't think they're selling all their stock. I think, honestly, John Harbaugh is confirmation bias. I'm guessing those coaches knew. Like most people in the NFL knew that he was. Remember,
he's a project.
Not just that, but all of these quarterbacks, okay? All of the quarterbacks that were taken in the first round, their stock was massively elevated by previous quarterbacks who have performed above their said level. I mean, Baker Mayfield going into last season was a third-round prospect. He becomes the #1 overall pick. Lamar Jackson was a second or third or even fourth-round prospect on many people's draft boards, but you have to have a quarterback, and especially the Ravens, who they lack the energy. Joe Flacco, this is the last year of that massive deal he signed after the Super Bowl. So it elevates their stock. It's almost like, do you guys know what the Peter Principle is in business? Where the Peter Principle, the idea of it is that you're elevated above the level of your competency, right? Peter Principle. Yeah. There's a little bit of Peter Principle in here in which he didn't look like a first-round pick. Did he look like a rookie quarterback who's going to have to learn a lot of things? And does he have some athletic talent, some arm talent? Yes. But for a first-round pick, and I'm trying to think who said it yesterday. I think it was Chris Canty who joined us yesterday, right? And said it's been since Aaron Rodgers was the last first-round pick to not start during his rookie season. A first-round draft pick has to look like an NFL quarterback.
Palmer, I don't think, played.
He did not.
Okay,
but I think people look at him differently than your typical first-round pick. Is there anybody that expects him to really play this year?
Well, that's
yes.
the question. How does the quarterback situation play out here in Baltimore?
There's no controversy. This is Joe Flacco is the quarterback, period. If anybody's going to play other than Flacco, it's going to be RG3. I mean, he actually looked pretty good.
If they keep three quarterbacks.
They need to keep three, because if something happens to Flacco, Lamar Jackson, as we saw last night, is not ready. So I agree they could play RG3 throughout the preseason and maybe trade him. RG3 looked like an NFL quarterback. Now, granted, he was going against second and third teamers himself, and he's got experience, obviously. But look, he may have been humbled by, his failures the last few years. But he looked good as a quarterback. He threw the ball well. He was 7 for 11. Should have been 9 for 11. The interception was right in the hands of the receiver, Paramore. So RG3, if anybody's going to play other than Flacco, it's RG3, not Lamar Jackson.
You and I agree, but fanboy doesn't. And hold on, but when you're in Baltimore, and everyone who comes, and Bart Scott sat here this week and said the exact same thing, being a former Raven. Joe Flacco has a 3-and-out, and the Boo Birds are going to come out, and he has there's almost like a Tebow-like feeling to what's going on in Baltimore, because people.
But it can't be Lamar.
Look, I understand. I'm with you. The reality is Joe Flacco's won a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco is, 20, 22 touchdowns, anywhere from 12 to 16 interceptions. He's fine. He's good. And if he's healthy, maybe those numbers spike and the interception numbers go down. That's reality. The problem is that perception these days becomes reality, and there's been so many young quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson set the world afire last year. Makes Ravens fans think, hey, he can be our Deshaun Watson. I don't believe he can at this point in his career. I think many of his flaws were on display. I think John Harbaugh saw last night that the one thing you want to know as a coach is the kid a gamer, right? Because a lot of times you see a guy in practice, and I wasn't a good practice player. Some people aren't good practice players. Then the lights go on, the popcorn's popping. I don't know if you were like this when you played at DePaul, and just some people are just better when. And I thought that he regressed towards his default, and his default is to run around back there. And look, he still runs around back there and throws, but if you don't set your feet, you're going to be inaccurate. If you run around, you don't get faster in the NFL. Everybody else does.
You saw. Yeah. He even said he was shocked at the speed. Like, his speed was evident, but so was everybody else's. He wasn't running away from everybody like college.
In the NBA, they tell you don't get longer, everybody else does. In the NFL, they say you don't get faster, everybody else does. Every level of football he's played to this point, when he gets out to the edge, it's over. Last night wasn't over.
I was good 100% of the time.
Always?
Always.
What about 110? What about 110%? Did you give 110%?
It's only 100.
Only 100.
Throughout the course of the game, we saw a lot of interviews of the upcoming Hall of Fame class inductees coming up. Will T.O. regret skipping out on the Hall of Fame festivities? That's next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First and on to the big story at Ohio State. The university has opened an investigation into Urban Meyer using a special independent board to run it. Also, the football team has closed practice to the media and players are not doing interviews. Chris, is Ohio State handling the investigation in the right way?
Look, I obviously like they put together an investigative team, if you will. 3 of them are from the Board of Trustees. 3 of them are not associated with the university, which I do like. So maybe this will be a legitimate, unbiased investigation. I like that, number one. Number 2, he's on paid administrative leave. You know, that's usually a precursor to being fired. And I'm fine with that, you know, paid for now. Let's see what the facts are. Let's be fair about it, and he gets his pay. You're hearing rumblings about a buyout. If he violated his contract, violated Title IX, obviously overlooked, you know, repeated domestic violence, then I don't see why there should be a buyout. I understand that's how it works a lot of times. You should just get fired, and not get a buyout. There's one victim in this, and it's the ex-wife of A.S.Smith. If anybody's going to get some money, it's her. All right, so finally, the media availability. I understand if players and coaches weren't available yesterday, maybe even today, and I would understand players, you know, over the weekend. They're young kids. They're not going to know how to deal with this. Maybe if they're unavailable for the weekend, maybe a little bit longer. But coaches should be available this weekend, if not today. I mean, this is a $1 million business. This is big business. You can't just run and hide. These are grown men, the coaches. They knew A.S.Smith. Even if they want to say, look, we're only talking football, we're not answering questions about that, whatever, that's probably what they will do. But you have to be available. You have to face the cameras and give reporters a chance to ask their questions.
Well, look, I think eventually Ryan Day will. He's the interim coach, and but the question was asked: is Ohio State handling things the right way? And I got to say that as of now, yes. I think they're gonna give due process to Urban Meyer, to the entire situation. I like that not everyone on the committee that's investigating is tied directly to the school, that it gives kind of a little bit of a bridge there. I even like the idea that, you know, you hire a Ryan Day to be the interim head coach instead of, you know, 2 coaches on staff who are far more qualified, you know, in Greg Schiano, of course, but Greg Schiano didn't get, you know, was going to get the Tennessee job. And then all of a sudden there was a firestorm because of his his background. And then, you know, Indiana's former head coach who got fired under, or resigned under a lot of heat and pressure for his treatment of players. Also, Greg Schiano, his most famous player, he coached at Rutgers, you know, just so happens, you know, to be the most famous domestic abuser in the history of the National Football League, right? So what they're trying to do is, hey, we got to do this process clean. I do think there's other things at play at Ohio State. There's a couple of other lawsuits. You know, there's wrestlers that are claiming that they were sexually abused as well. And so everybody is super sensitive, not just on this topic, but on all topics of abuse of athletes or abuse of power. But there's still a ton of information that we don't know. We don't know if Urban Meyer at Big Ten Media Day was just lying to us, or he really says he didn't know in 2015. What did he tell? What did he know? When did he know it? And what did he do about it? What's the reality to the Smiths household and what was actually taking place? But to answer your question, I do think that to this point, Ohio State has done everything by whatever book is out there, whatever their lawyers are. Their lawyers are the ones telling them, "Hey, we can't have media availability. Someone's going to say something that's out of turn. It never ends up working out." But
at some point, the coaches have to be available. I get it with the players; they're teenagers, a lot of them. The coaches have to talk at some point, and I'm fine with not yesterday, not today. But sometime soon, like this weekend, not a week from now, not a half a week from now, like this weekend or Monday or something.
Do you think there needs to be a timeline with this? I mean, obviously they want to go through the due diligence of treating this process properly, but given the fact with the start of the season, the start of the school year, how does that balance out?
Yeah, I don't know. You play Oregon State to home opener, and remember, this is the number 3 ranked team in the country. And I know all of that stuff pales in comparison to protecting women, protecting student athletes. I understand that. But there is still let's not punish these players and let them play their season because one assistant coach was allegedly abusing his now ex-wife. You got to collect everybody's cell phones. Then you have to go through everybody's data on their cell phones. Then, on the other hand, you don't want to give people time to get their story straight. You want to make sure you interview them in a timely process. But as for Urban Meyer, no, I don't think you can quick play this thing. I think you have to let all the facts, all the information, talk to the police, let it play out because, this happened really fast. You go back, it's a week and a half ago we had Big Ten Media Day. They were picked to win the league. Picked as a contender to win a national championship, and all of a sudden, the best or second best coach in modern day college football history is now very much in danger of losing his job because of a staff issue and the way in which he handled this staff issue going back over the past couple of years. This has happened really fast. I do think that we have to press pause and allow the people in Columbus to catch their breath and get all their information.
Yeah, you want to balance. Like you said, you don't want to wait too long and let this drag out. But the most important thing is the truth. Because, Urban Meyer could be a lot more innocent than everybody's saying right now. And he didn't actually commit it. He certainly may have been negligent, but he didn't commit the crime, if you will. So you want to be fair. You want to be fair to him. You want to be fair to the victim. You want to be fair to S.A.S. Everybody. You want to get the truth, and that is going to take some time. This shouldn't be a quick thing. Like, if we know everything by Wednesday or something, that sounds a little too quick to me. Like, you need to take your time and get to the truth.
I thought something you said there was brilliant, which is he may be a lot more innocent. And I think that what we want is we want guilty, we want innocent, we want black, we want white, right? But the world is filled with gray and with nuance. Even in the text messages or some of the accusations that his ex-wife has made, there's some gray there. There was a point in time to which, in her interview with Stadium Sports, she said, I reached out to my own parents. Wait a second, your parents knew that your husband was allegedly abusing you and they didn't come and scoop you up and take you out of this relationship? They weren't more involved? There's some other things that we just don't know yet. And because there is a bunch of gray, we'll get to it. But I do think that, was Urban Meyer honest when he found out what was going on? Whatever level of knowledge he had to know something. And because I just don't believe that you counsel an assistant coach or you counsel, somebody who's on your staff in 2009, you rehire them, when you get the Ohio State job, and then you completely wash your hands of it. I don't buy that part of it.
Especially somebody who's like a mentee to you. That's really what he was to him. And the text messages from his wife said that Urban said he didn't, Zach denied it, or, you know what I mean? Like, so it seemed like he did address with Zach what happened in 2015, but was told it didn't happen like she said. The biggest, but then he told the media he didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, the biggest problem is that he backed himself into a corner at Big Ten Media Day. His answers were black and white. His answers weren't full of nuance. He did not press pause. He did not, hey, that's a matter we'll talk about another day. And even if he was surprised by the speed by which S.A.S. was fired by the university after Brett McMurphy filed the original story, he didn't allow himself wiggle room. And, yeah, maybe he can lie to the media and not lie to his bosses, but it's not a good look. And if, in fact, he wasn't forthcoming with his bosses, or if he claims to not have had knowledge, boy, you're starting to get to the point to when it's when he is relieved of his duties, not if.
Yeah, and you're accountable for your staff and for your program. More First Things First is coming up right after this. Time for some stories to start your morning. Tiger Woods had a strong outing yesterday. He shot a 66 and is 4 strokes back the leader in Poulter. Doug, does Tiger have a chance to win this weekend?
He's won at Firestone 8 times. If he doesn't have a chance at Firestone, he doesn't have a chance anywhere. The one difference with this WGC Bridgestone Invitational and others is really, really strong group. You got Rory up there, DJ is playing, Jason Day, and others. But yeah, Tiger Woods, it seems like back in his prime and even after his prime, he's always played well in Akron.
Well, look, it's his best start in years, okay? So that's good. I mean, he's come on strong in some tournaments recently, but he started well. The bad news is that so did everybody else. He's tied for 14th, but he's certainly in the hunt. Obviously had the 50-foot putt yesterday. Was great on the fairways on the first 9, but then struggled on the second 9. So if he can get some more balance and be consistent with his driving, then I think he really could make a run at it.
It is crazy, hon. If you see Tiger with a golf club, you stop what you're doing as opposed to anyone else with a golf club.
Yep. Moving on to the NFL, the Patriots signed Eric Decker to a 1-year deal. New England has a hole at wide receiver with Julian Edelman missing 4 games, Brandon Cooks and Danny Amendola leaving in the offseason, and Jordan Matthews heading to the IR. Chris, how much can Eric Decker help the Patriots?
Oh, he can help them a lot. I think he's going to be very productive. He's a legitimately good receiver. He's not a number 1 by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a good 2 or 3 receiver.
Great point.
And Bill Belichick makes guys better. I think he's better than Chris Hogan, and Chris Hogan has been productive there. So I think Decker is going to be very good for them. I think this was a good pickup.
Raise your hand if you knew that he was a Tennessee Titan last year.
I mean, I knew.
There's no hands raised at the table.
Like that's what it's like.
But yeah,
like why are they showing Eric Decker footage? Why are they talking about Eric Decker and they have Tennessee Titan footage? Like he was actually their second leading wide receiver. That's one of those things that unless obviously fantasy football people knew and maybe at some point you picked him up because of injury. I'm intrigued by this. I've told you that what NFL people will tell you is this: there is no better team in the history of the NFL at picking up somebody off the waiver wire, picking up somebody off the street, and all of a sudden putting them into a specific role and having success. Eric Decker is just that guy.
It's the game last night. Robert Griffin III made his preseason debut for Baltimore. He went 7 for 11 for 58 yards, threw 1 touchdown and 1 pick. Chris, do you think RG3 can still succeed in the NFL?
I do. I was really encouraged by what I saw from him last night. I thought he had great command of the offense. You know, he threw the ball well. The interception was completely the receiver's. I mean, it literally hit the receiver in the hands, and he just dropped it, and it bounced to a defender. RG3 looked good. Again, his attitude was a big problem, you know, locker room, getting along with his teammates. He seemed like he was arrogant, but maybe he's been humbled over the past few years. You would think he has. And so I think he can help a football team and maybe even be a starter in this league in the future.
If you're not humbled by losing your starting job and then being out of the league all of last year. And, oh, yeah, by the way, look, he got divorced. His stock went from peak, this is the next wave of athlete, to out of the NFL. So I do believe he is humbled. He did look like an NFL quarterback. And, look, the job of a backup is very different than the job of a starter. We'll see if he can make Joe Flacco better, because that's his job now.
And finally, Andy Reid, who coached Terrell Owens in Philadelphia, referred to the Hall of Famer as, quote, one of the most coachable guys I've ever been around. Of course, T.O. is in Chattanooga instead of Canton this weekend. Chris, will he regret skipping out on the Hall of Fame festivities?
Yeah, as I was watching that game last night, and, you know, you see the introduction of all the Hall of Famers, Ray Lewis, Randy Moss, so on and so forth, and the highlights they're playing. I didn't feel like I was mad at T.O. and man, you're stupid, how could you do this, and criticizing him. But I felt sorry for him. You should be there. Why are you not there? Everybody would be pouring accolades onto you. There was no hint of, even with him not being there was no hint of disgust among, the NFL. The highlights they showed were all, of course, positive about him. This would have been a positive weekend for him. And as you heard the quote from Andy Reid, I think this would have been a time when you did hear more people speak like this. Chris Canty was here the other day. He said he was a great teammate in Dallas. So I think T.O. messed up. This is when you have the money and the means to have a really great wedding, and instead you just go to the justice of the peace. Okay, that's fine. It's okay. It's your prerogative. But, man, why not celebrate it with your friends and family and have a great time? I just think this would have been a great time and a chance for the beginning of the redemption of T.O.'s reputation. He'll say that his perception is not true, but it's out there. And we've seen athletes. Randy Moss is one. Ray Lewis is one. Alex Rodriguez in baseball. You see it all the time where athletes who had a bad reputation during their playing days, Michael Irvin's another, they rehabilitate themselves after they're done playing. And maybe that could have happened with T.O. Still could, perhaps, but this could have been the big moment for that to begin.
Yeah, listen, first thing is, for the record, I think a big wedding is a waste of money. I'm more of a destination wedding
Did
guy.
you have a big...
We had a big wedding, and I
Okay,
loved it, but then I think, man, her parents spent a ton of money.
I agree with that.
I agree
I
with
go
that,
to the
but it's
Justice
still
of the Peace.
really...
It's a party for everybody else. That's what it is. It's a party for everybody else. Yes, she still, you want her to get the white dress.
Even a destination wedding is still a celebration. Like, y'all don't like my analogy. That's
like
all right.
I have an analogy that might work for you. I have an analogy. Your high school reunion, what high school did you go to?
Holy Name.
Holy Name High School where?
In Cleveland.
Wait, Cleveland, Des Moines, Indy?
Yeah, right. Cleveland, Cleveland, Ohio.
And what high school?
Sandburg High School.
Sandburg?
Sandburg. Carl Sandburg.
Carl Sandburg, where?
Orland Park.
Okay, in Orland Park in Illinois,
yeah.
Correct? Okay, so you guys have both become incredibly successful. And look, there are people at your high school that are not as successful. And imagine if you were the guy in high school that you weren't necessarily bullied or picked on, but you weren't in the cool group, right? And then your 20th or 25th anniversary, your 20th reunion comes up, and you're like, I'm not going to go because that guy was a jerk, and this girl, said she was going to prom, and all the different things in high school. All of a sudden, you're like, screw them, I'm not going. And then you look on Instagram and you get FOMO, you get fear of missing out, and you see all their Facebook pages. You're like, you know what? I probably should have gone to that thing. And that's where T.O. is going to be this weekend. I understand the point. I understand a little bitter that you didn't get in the first 2 times and that people have set the narrative because it is, in fact, accurate that he was constantly a distraction. And you read kind of like, talking about a guy on Hall of Fame induction weekend about what he was like to coach, that's like reading somebody's obituary, right? You don't say all the nasty things they did. That you forget that, hey, our last year he was doing bicep curls and sit-ups in his driveway, and we won 6 games, and the second he left, we won 10 games. Andy Reid just glossed over all of that stuff, right? Because that's what you do Hall of Fame weekend. That's what you do at your high school reunion. You come back and you pretend like you all liked each other. That's what you do. Matter of fact, my high school reunion, there's a guy named Kevin Timoni. Kevin Timoni was the starting quarterback. He was better looking than me. All the girls liked him.
You had to have some popularity, though. You were a star basketball player.
I was fairly popular, but I didn't.
spent all week with him, Chris.
No,
Come on.
but I
You
went.
rubbed people the wrong way.
Sure, I rubbed you guys the wrong way. So, but
No,
Shocker.
I can't admit. I can't.
So look,
imagine.
like Kevin Timoni, he was. I didn't like. So I remember going to my high school reunion, thinking, man, I hope I don't run into Kevin Timoni. I really don't. And you know what? I had a beer with him. Had a beer with his wife, and I was like, he's kind of awesome now. He's got 2 little girls, super nice guy. I'm so glad I went.
And you were on TV and radio, so he's looking up to you like.
I did win.
Right?
I won. But
That made it a lot easier.
the point is more like you got to let the past, the past be just that. You are going to a place to where, just like your obituary, people are only going to recognize the good things that you've done. Of course, he will regret missing it.
I hate that we have to move on.
Whose analogy was better?
I hate that we
Whose
have
analogy
to
was
move
better?
Well, she agrees with you. I think
I
America
haven't had a
in
wedding,
general
and I
agrees
have
with
not
me.
gone to a high school reunion. So I
She's not
can't,
old enough.
I can't get in
You'd
on
be
this
old like
conversation.
that.
Moving on to the 76ers. They were unable to add a marquee free agent in the offseason to pair with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. However, Embiid says he doesn't care they didn't add another star, saying he wants to be better than those guys. They could have added, including LeBron James, Paul George, or Kawhi Leonard. Chris, will the 76ers regret missing out?
I don't think
stars?
regret's the right word because, look, they would have loved to have LeBron.
Yep.
He didn't want to go there. They would have loved to have Paul George. He didn't want to go there. They tried to trade for Kawhi, didn't want to give up as much as San Antonio wanted. So, I'm fine. I don't think regret's the wrong word. They would have been tremendous had they gotten one of those guys. As great as LeBron is, and he would have been fantastic there, getting Paul George or Kawhi would have been a better fit, an easier, more seamless transition with one of those guys. But here's the thing. You got 2 superstars in the making, I believe. There's no doubt in my mind Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid will be future superstars. We'll see what Markelle Fultz is. I liked what I saw from him as far as his speed, his aggressiveness, playmaking ability last year. He obviously didn't shoot the ball. But so you got potential there. You got some other role players. And here's the thing. They'll have cap space in the future. And any free agent that's serious about winning has to at least consider them, including Kawhi. Like, if I'm Kawhi Leonard, I'm considering them. I know he wants to go to L.A., but you at least look. What about Jimmy Butler? You know, Klay Thompson. I mean, if he wants to be a free agent and leave Golden State, like, he would be perfect in Philadelphia. You got a pass-first point guard, a tremendous big man. Their future is still very bright, even though it would have been great to add one of those.
I think they're disappointed. Will they regret was the question? Will they regret? I mean, some of it was out of their hands. On the other hand, I think, will they regret not getting Kawhi Leonard? I don't think so. And I think
may have been a rental.
Well, not just he may have been a rental, but building organically and growing from within is usually the way in the NBA. I know the super team thing has become the new way, but you got to feel the pain before you taste the champagne, right?
Golden State did that. And,
right.
Before they got Durant.
You lose early in the playoffs and you take another step. You lose in the playoffs and you take that's what's happened with the Boston Celtics last 2 years, Eastern Conference Finals. This year they get to a Game 7, they lose. That's what happened to Jordan. Remember, he couldn't get past the Pistons for a couple years. It happened to so many teams, and I think that's good for this team. We said all year that Ben Simmons shooting was going to be an issue, that somebody would figure it out, and sure enough, they got to the playoffs. I said all year that as incredibly talented, gifted as Joel Embiid is, the fact is he'd never really played in meaningful basketball games, and so sometimes his shot selection, his turnovers at inopportune times, his defensive awareness, there's a difference in playoff caliber basketball. So this year, they got a great learning lesson. And could they have skipped some steps and added a LeBron James or added a Kawhi Leonard? Sure, but a Kawhi Leonard would have been possibly a short term, and you would have had to rid yourself of some other key important ingredients. A LeBron James would have forced them to play LeBron James' way, not play the way they have kind of started playing these past couple years. It might actually end up being the best thing that ever happened to them, even if they're disappointed. I don't think they'll look back with regret in not overpaying for Kawhi Leonard.
Joel went further to say, he said, I want to be better than those guys, saying that he believes he could be MVP this season. And also saying, if I'm MVP, it wasn't just an individual thing. If I'm MVP, that means that our team is winning. Do you believe that Joel can be MVP this year?
I love the attitude. I love putting it out there, too. I want to be better than her, not worrying about hurting anybody's feelings or appearing arrogant or anything. And, yes, I think he could be an MVP. I think he's a top 5 candidate. I've got LeBron, Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid, Kawhi Leonard, and I'd say Giannis Antetokounmpo in Milwaukee. So I think the Embiid is in the top 5 candidates right now going into the season.
Yeah, the only thing that holds you back from saying yes is kind of what happens in Golden State, where you're going to split votes, because you have Steph and you have Kevin Durant.
You think Simmons is that? I don't think Simmons is there yet.
No, but statistically, he'll have dominant numbers in terms of a triple-double in the regular season. Like, he's a triple-double waiting to happen. And look, I think Joel Embiid is a legit MVP candidate. Last year was limited to 30 minutes a game, averaged 23 points a game. I'm not huge on stats, being parallels to just how dominant you are, but imagine how you prorate that if he can start playing in the 37, 38 minutes. Now, the challenge is going to be his body. Can he play 75 games? If you can play 75 games at 35, 36 minutes a pop, he's going to average 26, 27. He's going to average ridiculous numbers in terms of rebounding, and he's a rim protector, and they're going to be one of the top couple teams in the East. He absolutely should be an MVP candidate. But I love everything about him. I just want him to continue to work on his body, his nutrition, because his body can't let him down. That has befallen so many big guys that's my one fear. I completely understand why Philadelphia limited him in his minutes this season.
So you think him laying down on the massage table eating hamburgers right before the game wasn't a good idea?
Probably not the type of
laying
nutrition.
Down eating kale. Kale, Joel. Kale. I don't like it either, but you got to eat it.
You don't like kale?
Actually, I do.
You
bake
like kale, bake it, olive oil, some salt, some pepper.
All right, we'll get recipes later. Coming up, Earl Thomas lays down an ultimatum for the Seahawks. That is next on First Things First. Welcome back to First things first, two-time Super Bowl champ David Deal joins the show. Thanks for being here, David.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Excited the NFL season's back. We'll see when you're a former offensive lineman. You got to make up for it when you dress nice, right?
Doug was asking all of us our high schools earlier in the show.
Brother Rice, south side of Chicago. We're both Chicago area people, so it's excited to be back.
When you go back to high school reunions, you must just be the toast.
Well, you know, it's great spending my entire career, you know, out in New York, but still having my entire family back in Chicago. You know, obviously it's great to go back and see everybody, but we're still all close. And, you know, you think about my brothers going to the same high school. The head coach there now is my best friend's older brother who played with my brother. So there's still that connection, but it's always great.
Okay, so the question becomes, you haven't yet hit your 20th reunion, right?
Not yet.
Okay, so are you going to go?
Yeah, of course I'll go.
Right, that's like...
I'm not big time. Of course I'm going to go there.
Isn't that T.O. why T.O. should go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
You understand his point of why he's doing it, to go back and spend time with his family. But you got to think, you're going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and you're getting enshrined with the greatest of all time. And you think about the opportunity to have a gold jacket and walk past those players that you watched as a fan, that you wanted to emulate as a kid, and you will never have the chance to duplicate that feeling ever again. So for that instance, you have to be there. But for T.O., you knew he was going to do something on his own. You knew he would do it in his own personal decision. And it's just unfortunate by him choosing to do it this way. Those people who doubted him, he proved them right.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to move on and talk a little bit about the Seahawks. They have mostly moved on from the Legion of Boom. Cam Chancellor isn't playing this season. Richard Sherman plays for the 49ers. And Earl Thomas hasn't shown up to training camp. Thomas made his intentions clear in an article in the Players Tribune saying, offer me an extension or trade me to a team that wants me to be a part of their future. If they want to start over and rebuild, that's their right. All I ask, though, is that if that's the case and they don't want me anymore, just please trade me to an organization that does. David, how should the Seahawks proceed with Earl Thomas?
Well, you have to look at it in two ways, and we'll start off with the Seahawks organization. When they rewarded him in 2015 with the 4-year extension for $40 million, that was ahead of the market grade. When you sign that early, you know the salary cap's going to go up. You know people at your position are going to go up. So you know that there's going to be change in the market, and you're not going to be getting paid as much as everybody else. Also, look at the rebuilding of the Seattle Seahawks. There's no more Legion of Boom anymore. Right. There's no more Michael Bennett. Right now, you're looking at a leader in Russell Wilson on one side and Bobby Wagner on the other side that are really taking the reins and taking over this football team. So you think about those aspects, and you think about what they're trying to do in changing the culture. So they continue to grow. They're continuing to move different parts around. And when it comes down to it, we know that they're not a better football team without Earl Thomas on the football field. We know that when he's out on the field and they can play cover one and he can chase things down from sideline to sideline and be that presence in the run game, it completely changes the dynamic of their team. The problem for me is I love Earl Thomas. I love him as a player. He just approached this the wrong way. I understand that you say, which a lot of people say when it comes to this, it's not personal, it's business. But when you're a professional athlete selling out for your organization year in and year out, playing hurt, doing all those things, when it comes to the end of the year and they're looking at your production, they're not looking at, well, he played hurt in this game, he played hurt in this game. All they're looking at is a number. So when he goes out and he does all these things, it is personal. You are fully invested emotionally, physically, mentally, all to that football team. But at the same time, there's a way to approach it. Don't go up to Jason Garrett after a game in the locker room and tell him to trade for me.
Come on.
Don't call out Bobby Wagner for playing hurt at the end of the season. And when you sit here and saying that the Seahawks organization in his article have to honor your contract, you're the one not honoring the contract by not showing up to camp.
Well, I'm with you. You said change the culture. And you're right. Legion of Boom is gone.
Yes.
It is a new team. I mean, even though you still have Wilson and Wagner and guys like that, Earl Thomas is a part of that old regime, and even a part of that old regime that always questioned authority, even as they were winning, and may be tiring of Pete Carroll and the way he does things, may even be resentful from what happened in the Super Bowl a few years ago at the goal line.
Run the football.
Right. So I think they need to trade him. Now, the challenge is we talked off the set. The challenge is you got to trade him to somebody that's also willing to give him a long-term contract. And so they don't want to inherit your problem that you have right now. But there are teams out there. I mean, I'd love him in Dallas. We're talking about the Giants maybe needing some help in free safety. Or at safety. I don't know if they want him long-term, but he'd be a great fit there. So I would look to trade him, maybe beef up the offensive line. I think they're becoming better on the offensive end. So I would look to trade him for offensive line help or maybe a draft.
Again, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of the way. It's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? That's what your parents told us. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. And the Seahawks are going to do him no favors and trying to find the best landing spot for him. Yeah, they got to trade him to somebody who's willing, for a 29-year-old who's dynamic, but to give him a new contract. There's a limited number of teams, especially now when teams are already in camp and they're going to convince themselves, you know what, we'll be okay. We don't need to move mountains for an Earl Thomas. Especially because of the Dallas situation. And then you go to Players Tribune and you write a piece. Even if you thought, hey, listen, I just want people to understand my perspective, where I'm coming from, you are sharing personal, family, team business with the public. You're out in the Seattle Seahawks. You're calling them cheap. You're essentially saying they're disloyal. Even if you got your facts completely crossed, the fact is that by going into Dallas's locker room and telling Jason Garrett to come get me, by going and doing this Players Tribune piece, he's done more damage than he has done good for himself in the perception game within the confines of the front office for the Seattle Seahawks.
No question.
What does he do now?
Now I think he's going to have to stick true to his word. He's going to have to hold out, because you can't put out a statement like this, have a full article written about it, and then all of a sudden you turn the page and then you're going to cross the picket line. He's got to stick true to his word now and see what's going to take place. The thing that you really think about also is that even with everything taking place, who was to say that the Seahawks weren't going to get a deal done? Who's to say that they couldn't work something out for the next 2 seasons to get bonus and incentives based upon his performance and play? You don't know that. But for the fact, for all this taking place, and it's taking the light of who he is as a football player and turning him into, oh, well, he's another greedy athlete. He just wants more money. That's not him as a person, but the perception of the way that he's handled it has turned it into that.
The one thing that is, I think, a little bit of an irritant to those of us who aren't NFL players is it's disingenuous when players go with what their salary is for the season. As you pointed out, not only was it above market value, but it was a front-loaded contract.
Oh, yeah.
You get a big guaranteed signing bonus. I want it all up front now, right? And now now I want a new contract before the contract is up. Wait, on one hand, NFL players are telling us we want guaranteed contracts. We want our guaranteed money locked in and set. And the Seattle Seahawks sitting there go, wait, we gave you the money up front. We guaranteed your deal. We didn't cut you before your contract was up. We're willing to fulfill our end of the bargain, and you're not. I do think, to those of us who really pay attention to it and don't look at the yearly average instead of the yearly average for the entirety of the contract, which is really how you spread out the deal, I just think it's a disingenuous way of telling us you're underpaid when the truth is, you were probably overpaid if you want to play that game the first 2 years of the deal. All
right, David, we're going to have you stick around and get to the game last night. Coming up, did Lamar Jackson do anything to clear up the quarterback battle in Baltimore? That is next on First Things First. Let's move on to Lamar Jackson, who had his preseason debut last night against the Bears. The good, he was elusive in the pocket and managed to throw a touchdown pass. The bad, he only completed 40% of his passes and threw an interception. David, what was your first impression of Lamar Jackson?
Well, considering the fact that either it's their first preseason game of 4, or like for them, it's their first of 5, you're going in with a vanilla game plan. You want to go in with something basic that now all of a sudden the quarterback, the offense, or the defense can go out there and they don't have a coach yelling in their ear while they're in the huddle trying to direct everybody. So number one, what you're looking for, how does he control that offense? How does he control the huddle? How does he get him to break in cadence and have that type of timing that he needs to get out of it? Because he was used to looking at the side and looking at a number instead of all the verbiage that it takes to tell and call out an NFL play, which could be anywhere from 12 to 15 different words, and to spit that out in time, get everybody lined up. Those were the small things that you were looking for, which he did very well. The other thing that you were looking for, what did we have to work on? His footwork. He worked with a narrow narrow base. That was something he worked out before the draft and throughout the time now. You could see him really focusing in and hammering on that. And he proved people right that said he's not a run-first quarterback. He's going to look to throw the football and then be elusive and use those legs. He showed that last night. He wasn't looking just to tuck the ball away and run. He was looking through his progressions. Now the negatives. The accuracy and the timing. You know when you throw an out route to your wide receiver, it better be on time. And if you're going to miss, you miss to the outside. You can't miss to the inside. That's where you saw the interception, and that's where it comes up to accuracy and the things that still linger for him as a young, developing quarterback. But having said all of that, this is going to be no dictation of who he can be when it comes week 1 with 4 more preseason games left to go, with Marty Mortonwig starting to get more creative once you get towards the 4th and 5th preseason game to start showing some things that they're going to do during the regular season. But I think they're moving in the right direction. To be honest with you, I thought RG3 looked phenomenal last night. He played with confidence. He played inside the pocket. He made good throws. He was in timing. And that's something that we haven't seen out of RG3 in a while, because we're used to thinking back to 2012 and the electricity that he brought to Washington. But he was reckless with his body, and that's where he is, why he is where he is right now, because he played that way.
Okay, that was really my issue, though, with Lamar Jackson. Taking into account everything that you said about Lamar Jackson and how you view him, I watched him drop back, and every time he saw pressure, instead of stepping up and stepping into his throws in the pocket or stepping up as he went through his progressions, he drops the football, and his default is to run far too often. And granted, it's his first pro game, I understand. And while he did play in a college system, played for Bob Petrino, a very good offensive coach, very good quarterback coach, and I was a little bit surprised and, frankly, a little bit disappointed that there wasn't more progress made on his ability to have pocket discipline, to stay in there, almost trying to prove us wrong in that we all think of him as an athlete, and he proved us right in that kept tucking the ball and running it, or even if he was looking down the field, instead of trusting your tackles to do their job and stepping up and stepping into his throws. That's something we didn't see from him with only one night.
I don't know if you saw that backup offensive line. There wasn't too much to trust in his tackles on the outside. But the thing that you love about what Lamar Jackson brings to a football team is that he forces defenses to play 11-on-11 football. When you can run that inside zone read and hold the backside defensive end, when you can get a defensive coordinator to have to hold the rusher to play spy and play on that quarterback for him to break contain, you get an extra guy off of a wide receiver. You get an extra guy off of a running back. And for me, playing offensive tackle for 11 seasons in the NFL, do you think defenses were concerned about Eli Manning breaking the pocket and running with it? No, they were worried about getting that pressure and getting to him in the pocket. So when you have a quarterback like this that does that to a defense, it puts a lot of coordinators in a bind, because what do you have to do? You have to blitz. You have to take care of every single gap. And when you do that, you're setting yourself up for either a big play or a home run for the offense.
You mentioned week 1. We know Flacco's going to start, and he should. But I kind of view Lamar as a project.
Yeah.
You sound like you think he could be ready a lot sooner. How soon do you think he actually be ready to play or start in an NFL game?
I don't think he's going to start this season. I think that they're going to play it out and see how Joe Flacco plays, but he's definitely going to have a pitch count. You know, Marty Mortonwig has been very creative. Michael Vick, Donovan McNabb, Jeff Garcia, Steve Young. He's been around all those guys. The offensive assistant, Greg Roman, was the offensive coordinator for Colin Kaepernick in San Francisco. So they're going to find ways to get him onto the field, not only just as a quarterback, but also we've heard that they've had him and Flacco on the field at the same time. Can you imagine running a jet sweep and having him being able to use his ability in space, not only to either run it, but to also throw it out of that? Like I said, that deception, that ability just makes that split-second hesitation for the defense that much more valuable for an offense.
The RG3 thing is really interesting because I think we all saw it. Now, he should look refined. I know he didn't play football for a year, but he has a ton of credit hours in the National Football League as a starter. Even going to Cleveland, he did get a chance to start for the Cleveland Browns. Keeping 3 quarterbacks. How often is that done when you have a project now? You have a guy, but you're going to use Lamar Jackson. Do you keep 3? RG3 plays well enough to where you're like, he should be on a team, but is the Ravens the team that he ends up on?
And that is the biggest question, because all of this is surrounding around Joe Flacco's play, which we are not going to be able to see until the regular season. And that's why it's going to put the Baltimore Ravens in a tough situation, because we know Lamar Jackson is the future of the organization. We're still not unsure if RG3 is going to be a part of it, and the decision is still made to be met with Joe Flacco on whether they're going to keep him or try to trade him. So that's where it's a tough situation, and it puts him in a bind, because let's say you do go out there with Joe Flacco. He doesn't play well, and now you're going to want to try to switch to Lamar Jackson or RG3. Are you going to be able to take away another spot in another position, whether it is offensive line, whether it is another wide receiver or a running back or a pass rusher? Because when you do take that roster spot and it's not granted to a practice squad guy, you're going to be slim in another department on your team.
See, I think if it's not Flacco, like you said, if he plays poorly through the first 5 or 6 weeks and they want to make a change, I think you go to RG3. Like, I'm with you. I don't think Jackson will be ready yet.
No.
So it's a tricky situation, because RG3 is 28. He's still, I mean, with all his talent, you know, it's too soon to give up on him. So this is really going to be interesting with those two, I think.
What more do you want to see out of Lamar Jackson throughout the rest of this preseason?
Once again, we're going to see his developmental, just continue to grow. Timing in and out of the huddle at more times. The other thing, you know that they're going to run RPOs, run pass options, and you want to see him really take control and have that leadership of that group. I know for me, as a 5th-round draft pick, not having a spotlight on me like Lamar Jackson, how difficult it was to come into the preseason game, not because it's your only game, but when you're coming out of college, you're used to rolling right out of the locker room, playing the first half, leading. But in that whole first half, you're sitting back, you're getting cold, you're watching everybody, right. And all of a sudden you're supposed to hit the switch in the second half and say, hey, this is my team now and I need to take over. That's what I want to see out of him come to week 2 of the preseason.
Were you as good a practice player as you were a game player, or were you a gamer?
I was as good as practice as I was in the game. That's the only way you can do it.
That's how we do it in Chicago.
You got to be able to translate it.
That's how we do it
if you don't have the
He was
preparation,
a loafer Monday.
I wasn't a loafer. I just wasn't.
If you don't have the preparation during the week, you will have no confidence.
I'm not saying I didn't try in practice. You
gave the same answer I did, David.
Yeah,
absolutely. Some Chicago South Side.
It's the way it goes. We're going to see you a little later in the show, David. Coming up, why didn't Joel Embiid care about teaming up with LeBron? Hear from him next on First Things First. Time for In or Out. Earl Thomas hasn't shown up to camp. Yesterday, he wrote in a Players Tribune article that Seattle needs to offer him an extension or trade him. Chris, you in or out on Earl Thomas being on the Seahawks in Week 1?
I'm out, but I think it's going to be a challenge to move him, because wherever you trade him to, they're going to likely have to give him an extension too and look at him, for the future. They don't want to just inherit the same problem that Seattle has. I'd love to see him in Dallas. I don't know that the Giants are interested, but I think he'd be a great fit there. Kansas City, Tampa Bay, they need a safety, but I'm out, although I don't know where he'll end up.
I'm out on him playing first week of the season. This is a game of chicken. There's a little bit of Kawhi Leonard here to what Earl Thomas is doing, right? I want to be a Cowboy. Send me to the Cowboys, telling the Cowboys to come get me when I'm available. And eventually you can't go home, and they don't want to send you to the Cowboys because the Cowboys aren't going to give him the best offer. So I'm out as far as him playing Week 1. Might have played his last game as a Seahawk. This is a game of chicken. We'll see who blinks first.
I think the thing is, too, the NBA players have more leverage because their contracts are better.
No, there's no question, but he is in the last year of his deal, and look, it's a completely new regime in that defensive backfield for the Legion of Boom. Completely new.
I like that analogy better than the high school reunion one. The Patriots added some help to a depleted receiving core yesterday, signing Eric Decker. Decker had over 1,000 yards 3 years ago with the Jets, but managed less than 600 last year with Tennessee. So, Doug, are you in or out on Eric Decker making an impact with the Patriots?
I'm in on him making an impact. Long-term impact, I don't know. Julian Edelman comes back. They get they're not healthy right now, but Jordan Matthews, I think, comes back potentially from IR. But I look at Eric Decker and think, here's a guy who's productive. Here's a guy who will line up in the right spot, and Tom Brady will make him look like a better wide receiver. He was never a true number one. You pointed that out. Even in his prime, he was never a true number one. But in an ensemble cast, he can be very good. And that's an ensemble cast that they're putting together in New England. They need his legs. He can catch the football. He'll make some form of impact with the Patriots.
I mean, what receiver don't they make better? I think he's better than Chris Hogan. I know
Chad Johnson would be the guy.
Well,
Chad Johnson.
All right,
would be the guy.
you're correct. But I think that Decker hasn't been productive in a couple years. I mean, he was okay last year, but really hadn't been productive in a couple years. But I think they will make him better. I think, like I said, he's better than a Chris Hogan. He's a legit, probably third receiver at this point in his career, but he'll be very productive there.
To the NFC East, Washington safety DJ Swearinger believes his team is better now that they have A.Smith instead of Kirk Cousins. Swearinger says Smith is the leader they lacked. Chris, are you in or out on Washington being better with A.Smith at quarterback?
I'm in on them being better, but the division is so tough. I mean, they were 7-9 last year. They could have a similar record, even though they may be a better team, just because everybody in that division got better. So I think they're going to have a tough schedule. But, Alex Smith has proven he can win. He proved it in San Francisco some years. He certainly proved it in Kansas City. For all Kirk Cousins' gaudy numbers, at least compared to Alex Smith, he never really won. So I get where Swearinger's coming from.
Captain checkdown, right? That's what they call him in Kansas City. But you're going to miss him when he's gone. Think about this. Last 5 years in the National Football League. 2 guys with the most wins, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, right? Third most wins, Alex Smith.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't mean they'll win in the playoffs, but Kirk Cousins didn't win the playoffs either. He protects the football. He gets it where it needs to go, although he doesn't push it down the field enough. He's coming off a career year. Alex Smith, they're close to the same guy. Alex Smith just seems to be a little bit more likable with coaches, with players than maybe Kirk Cousins was when he was in D.C. I think they'll be a little bit better because he turns the ball over a little bit less. And he's been successful, as you mentioned, in San Francisco at the end of his run and in Kansas City. Success breeds success. I think some of those other teams in the NFC East might be a little bit overrated as opposed to the Redskins being underrated.
All right, let's switch from Sundays to Saturdays. The first coaches poll was released yesterday, and Alabama took the top spot. The Crimson Tide walked away with 61 of the 65 first-place votes, with Clemson and Ohio State splitting the other 4. Doug, are you in or out on Alabama repeating as national champions?
I'm going to be out on this one. And look, Alabama is close to not getting into the college football playoff. Like I'm going to steal the made-up word of the great Roger Clemens. We misremember at times the college football season based upon how it ends, right? Georgia with a freshman quarterback, granted, loaded with Roquan Smith and with Sony Michel and with Chubb in the backfield. They were loaded, but with a freshman starting quarterback, nearly beat Alabama. Of course, Alabama had to change quarterbacks at the half to propel their own offense to win the game. So remember, Alabama almost didn't get in because they didn't win the SEC last year, as opposed to Clemson, who's going to be a dominant team in the ACC this year with an incredible defensive line. They got dudes all over the football field.
That's your pick?
I would say that Dabo Swinney, an Alabama alum, would be my most likely team to win the national championship.
I'm in on Alabama. Obviously, Ohio State, I think, is going to drop off and just not be as good as we expected, assuming this goes the way most people feel it will with Urban Meyer being dismissed. So that's one team you kind of take out of the hunt. Clemson will certainly be tough, but I'm going to go with Alabama. I hope they play Tua. I don't know if, we don't know if he's going to try to play both quarterbacks, Tua and Jalen Hurts, together. I never really like that when a team does that. I'm sure
you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one.
Right, and obviously he knows more than we do about it. But Tua, man, that was impressive. And their problem, even when they win these championships, they're never really dynamic offensively. With him, they could be. I'm going to trust that their defense is going to be legit. And you put him in there, now they've got a dynamic offense potentially. I'm going with Alabama.
Look, I wouldn't dismiss Ohio State just yet.
Even if Urban's not there.
Look, they still got the dudes, right? And remember, in their coaching staff, you got Kevin Wilson, who comes over from Indiana as a head coach, but he was very successful.
Did a good job there.
He's actually a very good coach. He was an excellent offensive coordinator, run game coordinator when he was at Oklahoma. Yeah. And then you got Greg Schiano, who's their defensive, co-defensive coordinator, who is coaching the NFL and coached Rutgers to prominence. Like, they're still ridiculously talented, ridiculously well coached. Will there be a drop-off? Potentially. But they get Michigan at home, And I think they're better at quarterback than they have been. I think there's no question in my mind they're better in terms of the ability to throw the ball down the field than they have been at quarterback in previous years. I wouldn't cross off Ohio State just yet. So
you think they will be inspired if Urban Meyer is not there? Will they be inspired? Will they be a bit down, or really not any impact at all?
Here's what happens. It becomes us against the world.
That's what I'm saying. So,
but I think that's a bunch of bull to be like, look, you start playing football, it does become about coaching, about play calling, about motivation, but the old we'll win one for the Gipper thing. Once you start playing, it's about who's got the better team, who's got the better schematics.
Coaching is huge in football.
It is, but they are still very well coached, right? It's not like Urban Meyer's it's not like he's Jim Harbaugh coaching the offense off the sideline. Now you don't have him. I'm not saying Urban's not an incredible coach, especially he's a very good big game coach, but there's not that much drop-off because you have Schiano and Wilson who are still anchoring the other sides of the football. And, with Dwayne Haskins at quarterback, I think it gives them a much more dynamic offense than what they have had previously. I like this Ohio State team, whereas it's not that Alabama's not tremendous, but the two quarterback thing ain't gonna work.
Yeah, I don't like the two quarterback.
It ain't gonna. Tua is the guy. Tua gives you a better opportunity. The problem is that for the last 2 years,
he's been a great leader, no question. Jalen Hurts.
But Jalen Hurts can't throw a football.
I know.
All right, let's finish up in the NBA. And one of its biggest personalities, Joel Embiid, led the Sixers to their first 50-win season in 18 years, and now he's got his eyes set on some personal accolades. He told reporters that he feels like he's an MVP candidate. So, Chris, are you in or out on Embiid as a legit MVP candidate?
I'm big time in on him being a legit MVP candidate. I think he's in my top 5, right? I've predicted LeBron James leads the Lakers to about 53 wins and wins the MVP.
Yep.
But I've got Anthony Davis, and a lot of this depends on the team's success. You got to win 50-plus games to be considered MVP, except when Russell Westbrook wowed everybody with the triple-double. So Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard in Toronto, and Giannis and Joel Embiid.
No James Harden? Like James
I
Harden
don't
won
think
his
there's a
MVP, and then you're just gonna cross him off?
Well, I just think
no Russell Westbrook. You're just gonna cross Russell Westbrook.
Unless
no Kevin Durant.
OKC
you're just gonna cross Kevin Durant.
Look, I think there are reasons.
Steph Curry. You're just gonna cross Steph Curry.
Look, you know that Durant and Steph will cancel each other out, just like Shaq and Kobe used to cancel each other out.
He's a wobbly fighter right now. Can you give him a stand? Can you give him a standing
They
eight?
better win a ton of games for Westbrook to get it, and maybe they will. You think they will? Maybe they will. So Westbrook would be in the hunt. His shooting percentage is probably going to be very low.
Yeah.
He got his MVP. He averaged a triple-double last year. Nobody even thought of him for the MVP. So I just think that not that these candidates I named will be better than the guys you said. Harden's going to be right there at the top of the league, but he won his last year. If they win 60-plus games, it's not going to shock anybody. So I think.
Do you think Joel is a legit candidate?
I think he's a legit candidate. I was giving you the business.
Who's your favorite right now? Who would you pick?
I want your top 5.
Or even
top, all of a sudden on the spot, I come up with a list. Like we named all the best players.
Right.
I mean, look, this kind of goes back to the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar thing. It all depends on your situation, right?
Very true.
If you're Steph Curry,
LeBron's in a perfect situation to win it, right?
He is. The question is, does he have the space to be LeBron? Does he want to play 82, which might hurt your averages, as opposed to if you play 70-something. And I've always thought that one of the reasons LeBron James didn't play 82 games and played a ton of, remember he led the league in minutes 2 years ago, right? That he did that because it helps your average. Look, Joel Embiid is going to be an MVP candidate. The candidate pool is a little bit bigger than a top 5 guys, but the thing he needs to improve is his shot selection. He shot below 50% from the field for a guy that's that big. Yeah. He needs to take better shots in key situations. But if you prorate averaging 23 a game for 30 minutes to 36, 37, 38 minutes, and he plays 75 games, he'll average 28. He'll average 14 boards. He'll average close to 2 blocks a game, and they're going to win 50-some-odd games. He'll absolutely be an MVP candidate.
All right.
He copped out. He didn't give us his favorite.
We're going to get his top 15.
I need a list.
Harden, is that your guy?
Coming up, there's some speculation that Katie is already looking ahead to rejoining the Thunder. We'll explain that next on First Things First. Tiger Woods had a strong outing yesterday. He shot a 66 and is 4 strokes back. The leader, Ian Poulter. Doug, does Tiger have a chance to win this weekend?
Yeah, it's a place that he dominates. This course should be named, instead of Firestone, it should be Tigerstone. He's won there 8 times. I didn't stutter. 8 times on this course. Now, it's an unbelievable leaderboard in terms of who's who. Dustin Johnson is behind him, Rory McIlroy, Jason Day in front of him. Like, there's some dudes up there, but nobody is better in Akron, Ohio, outside of maybe LeBron James, than Eldrick Tiger Woods. Does he have a chance? Yeah, he usually doesn't play well first day of this event, and he did yesterday.
Right, he started well. This is his best start to a tournament in years, you know, so if he can maintain it. His driving failed him on the back 9, so if he can be consistent with that, he was great on the front 9 in that regard, then I think he definitely has a shot.
Moving on to the NFL, the new helmet rule was under the microscope in last night's Ravens-Bears Hall of Fame game. Baltimore was penalized twice for illegal helmet hits. So, Chris, how do you see the new helmet rule affecting the season?
I mean, I think there were reports that the officials were saying, you know, we reviewed all these games and there were only 6 incidents that would have been called fouls. We saw 2 last night. And then another one that was called a defensive receiver in the end zone, which Al Michaels, I believe, was saying it was a helmet. Michaels was saying last night, if the helmet is the crown of the helmet is the first thing to hit the opponent, even if you hit him in the shoulder or any other part of the body, then you can be flagged for the penalty.
They're trying to keep it from another.
That's going to happen.
They're trying to keep it from another Ryan Shazier. Like, no one wants to see a superstar player nearly be paralyzed on national TV.
I get that, but that was, I mean, that doesn't happen a lot in the NFL. It happened one time in many years. I'm not saying it's not one too many, but
football fans, football guy, okay? Take a breath. This is, in baseball, had this a couple years ago, the Buster Posey rule, where catchers can no longer block the plate. And baseball players said, that's not baseball. You know what? Baseball's fine with that. Matter of fact, it's more.
But that's not comparable to this.
Yes, it is for players' safety.
That would be trying to teach guys how to swing the bat differently. This
trying
is
to teach a catcher to not
hit and tackle differently.
Trying to teach a catcher to not block the plate? That's all they.
How often does that play happen? You get tackled on every play in the NFL.
Listen, I understand. We're trying to teach you to wrap up, to see what you hit. And also, you have to keep in mind, this happened in the NBA. When the NBA cleared up hand checking, and I'm not saying that hand checking is like helmet-to-helmet contact, but the idea, remember when they took out hand checking, the start of the season, they did in college basketball with the freedom of movement. Start of the season is almost unwatchable because they're over-officiating it early, knowing once you get to the end of the season and into the playoffs, they're going to under-officiate it. Look, this is for players' safety. This is for the betterment of the sport. It's helped quarterbacks. They all went crazy when the quarterback rule. You can't touch a guy above the neck ever, below the knee. There's this, it's like Anchorman. There's this small area where you're allowed to hit them. And you know what? Now they're playing into their 40s.
Think about not too long ago, the NFL's concussion settlement, $1 billion.
Billion. And they thought it was going to be 2.
That's what it's about. It's about the money.
We will end with the Cowboys' Dez Bryant saga. When Dallas's wide receivers coach was asked if they were better off without Dez, he said, quote, I would rather have down the field guys than go run down a ball and score than live in the back shoulder world. We want touchdowns. So, Doug, are the Cowboys better off without Dez?
They're saying that Dez can't separate, right?
Yes,
that's
it's true.
Which
at
is
this point.
I guess true. Like, we'll see if Allen Hurns can in fact separate. You know, we'll see this new Terrence Williams, how he looks when he doesn't have Dez, he doesn't have Jason Witten. They're going to be wildly dependent on Ezekiel Elliott to bring another guy in the box and define some mismatches.
They don't have a number 1 receiver, right? Wouldn't you? I don't think they do.
I mean, I guess we'll see if Allen Hurns is capable of being a number 1 receiver. We'll also see if Dak Prescott is capable of finding a number 1 receiver. But what he's saying is, hey, look, this dude he didn't have it anymore. It wasn't for lack of trying with Dez. Yeah. We threw to him 133 times between his hands, which at times failed him, and the fact that he couldn't separate. It's hard. And look, some of this is on Dak. He does not have pinpoint accuracy, especially when he goes through his progressions. That's when his accuracy starts to wane, sometimes even on the move. He's not he's not Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson in terms of accuracy on the move. But when you hear back shoulder or down the field, what they're saying is Dez Bryant has lost a step, and we brought in younger guys. They may not have as big of names or as big of egos, but they have better speed, and speed kills. That's the message out of Dallas.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I think, look, getting Dez's attitude and ego, and we heard Stephen Jones reference it earlier in the week. You know, not just Dez, but he mentioned Witten too. But, you know, just wanting the ball, demanding the ball, putting that pressure on the young Dak Prescott. Now, I don't think they have a really good receiving core. It might be okay. Maybe it'll be better than I'm giving it credit for, but it's certainly not a great receiving core.
On paper, it is not.
On paper, they're not better without Dez. But maybe, again, without his attitude and all of that, there'll be a better core and there'll be more harmony.
I mean, listen, Jason Witten's another guy that couldn't separate. I mean, Jason Witten's we're gonna knight him because he's likely to go in the Hall of Fame. He's a Ring of Honor guy. He's gonna be on Monday Night Football. But I mean, he couldn't run anymore. And listen, I understand that Antonio Gates had 15 catches last 2 games of the season last year, and he can't run. And these older tight ends, they find a way. But I mean, it was bad, really, really bad. ESPN did the Cowboys a favor by offering him Monday Night Football, because otherwise you have to throw to him, and he can't separate. Now you get more youth at the tight end. Now you get more speed out wide. That opens up the middle of the football field for a guy like Cole Beasley.
All right, moving on to Kevin Durant. Since leaving the Thunder, he's won 2 rings, 2 Finals MVPs, and fought with too many strangers on the internet. But some are speculating he may return to OKC. Friend of the show, Chris Mannix, said Durant will consider returning to the Thunder next season. And I want to make sure to clarify, because I was on Chris Mannix's podcast, he does not have sources on this. He is just saying that he thinks that Kevin Durant should. Chris, do you think that Durant really should consider returning to his old team?
Look, if Kevin Durant likely wins his 3rd championship this year, whether he's Finals MVP or not, you know, he may be again, may not be, whatever, that doesn't really matter. I think the best option is look to stay in Golden State. You could win 4 or 5 rings. Who knows how many you could win? You could win more than LeBron James. You could claim to be the greatest winner of this era. Some people already think, you know, he may be better than LeBron James. So legacy-wise, it's great to stay in Golden State. If you want to leave, I would look at New York. These are places I'd look at before Oklahoma City. New York, I think, you know, they're going to have money for maybe 2 max guys. What if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving go to New York to join Kristaps Porzingis? Maybe Kevin Knox becomes a player. I mean, that's something special. It's always good to be in the East.
You got to tell the aggregators, by the way. Make sure you tell the aggregators these are not sources. This is your own thing.
This is
right?
my what I'm thinking.
Opinion.
I have no reason to think he wants to go home. Okay, remember everybody was talking about Washington before he went to Golden State? That was just foolish speculation. But Washington wouldn't be a bad place. If you don't mind being at home, you'd have John Wall, Bradley Beal.
Scotty
Brooks.
Yeah.
That's right, the connection. Again, you're in the East, so that wouldn't be bad. The Lakers, you know, I'm not high on. I think there's reason for him to stay and keep beating LeBron rather than to join him. But certainly if he went to the Lakers, I think that's not a bad move. OKC, I'm not going to kill him if he would look at OKC. But part of it is like, people already think he followed LeBron when he decided to go to Golden State because LeBron went to Miami. Now LeBron went back to his first team and won. Do you go back to your first team and win? It's still nice and sentimental, but do you want to keep doing that? And here's the difference. LeBron was from Northeast Ohio.
Correct.
That was his hometown team.
Correct.
Oklahoma City, obviously, is not Kevin Durant's hometown team. So I think that ship has sailed. It would be a nice sentimental story if he did it. But I think they would be very low on his list.
So you're saying one in a million? So you're saying there's a chance. You're saying there's a chance. Listen, let me first start with the Golden State thing, okay? The narrative out there is, well, you had to join a 73-win team to win a title. Well, first of all, that 73-win team did not win a title. Like, yes, Golden State rescued Kevin Durant from a lifetime of trying to climb that mountain. But he rescued them right back. If you go like the old Pretty Woman reference, right, at the end where she says he rescued him right back, that's exactly what happened with the Golden State Warriors. They didn't want to sign Harrison Barnes to a long-term deal. They didn't think Harrison Barnes had that championship medal. He was wide open in the NBA Finals. There was a reason that Golden State team with 73 wins. It's amazing. We only pay attention to it because it's a record, right? The Boston Celtics 2 years ago had the best record in the East. Did anybody think they're the best team? No. This year, Toronto Raptors, the best team had the best record. Were they the best team? No. Houston Rockets this year, best record in the NBA. Do people think they were legitimately the best team? No. Yet when the Golden State Warriors had 73 wins, because the previous year they had won a championship.
Don't you think, though, they were, and I'm not taking anything away from Cleveland's victory, because you still had to win 3 straight games, 2 of them in Golden State. Okay, so nothing away from that. But I think if Draymond Green is not suspended, Golden State wins that series probably in 5. Not because Draymond is such a great player, but just for momentum, it changed the whole momentum.
Because he's an integral part of everything that they do. Right. Absolutely. And
so they were still the best team.
And Andrew Bogut got hurt.
Right.
The point is, though, that these things, like we act as though had he not come, they still would have won a championship. All right, well, they would have had to re-sign Harrison Barnes to a huge contract. And, oh, yeah, by the way, Andrew Bogut got hurt. He was never the same. They would have had to replace him.
And there's questions as to whether Steph physically could have carried them all these years.
Correct. So the idea that he joined a 73-win team is true. Technically, in reality, it wasn't like he joined a team that had swept everybody in the playoffs, won 73 wins, they had everybody back, and they added Kevin Durant. They had to make an adjustment to their bench. Now, will he go back to Oklahoma City? Hell to the no, he's not going back there. He don't go back to Oklahoma City. LeBron did it because it was home, and the moment he's left Oklahoma City, a city that bowed down to everything he did. Remember, they loved him so much that they apologized for a headline that said Mr. Unreliable, because he was, in fact, unreliable against the Memphis Grizzlies in the playoffs. This happened. In real life, he had a couple bad games. The headline of the Oklahoma was Mr. Unreliable, and everybody freaked out. How dare you say anything bad about Kevin Durant? Then the second he walks out the door, he's got haters galore, and he engages in it. I don't think there's any way he walks back into Oklahoma City. I can name 10 teams. He didn't mention Miami. He didn't mention the Bulls with their cap space. He didn't mention the Clippers, who still think they can get Kawhi Leonard. It's in L.A., and he could beat LeBron James. There's 10 other teams other than Oklahoma City. And I'm not trying to take shots at Oklahoma City. I'm telling you the reality of this divorce, to which he thought, hey, we left on great terms. We left on great terms. Everybody's happy. And you know what? Now that he's gone, it's not so much great terms.
I think aside from all of that, it's still a bad basketball fit. He just went to Golden State. I think he's just played in a organization and with a team that is the most unselfish, ball-moving, beautiful way that he now enjoys playing. And we saw in the playoffs, like he's true. Still isolation, but he can still create on his own. They utilize him. But he loves the way they play. So you were telling me that he wants to go back to playing the way that he didn't enjoy playing in the Thunder?
That's the big reason, the main reason he went there. Yes, yeah, of course you knew you could win, but he wanted to play that style of basketball. I'll also say this. Paul George is there now. And granted, you'd be a better team with you, Paul George, and Russell Westbrook than you were before George was there. But it might be a little different. If it was virtually the same old OKC team and Russ is trying to go about it by himself and climb that mountain, and Durant goes and you become kind of that old OKC team that had Golden State down 3-1, then you win it. That's a little different. You go now, it's kind of a new team because you got George and – you know,
look, he and Russell Westbrook were married very, very young, right? They were a beautiful couple, and he reached superstardom before, and then he leaves, and Russell Westbrook gets in great shape, starts dating somebody else, in this case, Paul George, and, you know, he's an MVP, and, you know, look, you still remember why you were married, you still care for each other, you know, but there's a reason you got a divorce. There's a reason that you moved on, and the fact that Russ dominates the ball. Russ is wired differently. They're still friends. They're much better friends than anybody, but they still called him a cupcake. They still called him soft. They still try and big boy him and debo him every time he comes to Oklahoma City because they think that the truth is he's soft. He had to join the 73-win team. He's not going back there. Reason he got divorced is the reason they won't get remarried.
And he's not a guy that will forget that. And I love your analogies, Doug.
That's what I do.
Keep them coming. Coming up, are the Giants making a mistake already negotiating with Odell Beckham Jr.? That's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. Two-time Super Bowl champ David Deal You still came back.
Yeah, I'm still here. I had a
sure.
coffee. I had a little donut Danish in there in the green room. We're good.
Empanada's coming if you want to hang around.
And what better way than a Lloyd Christmas reference in the last segment? I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
A lot of Dumb and Dumber happens on this show.
I do. Just when I think you couldn't do anything dumber, you completely redeem yourself.
And with that, let's move on to your former team, David, the New York Football Giants. Odell Beckham and the G-Men have started negotiations on a contract extension. Beckham is currently playing the season under his fifth-year option, and he has said he wants to be the highest-paid receiver in the league. David, do the Giants need to extend Odell before the season starts?
Absolutely. This is something that you want to get taken care of before the season starts so that it is not a distraction during the regular season, because after every game, it's going to be, well, great game, Odell. What about the contract talks? And it's never going to go away. And when you think about when it comes to now Odell Beckham Jr. and this big contract extension, what was talked about before any of that? Rebuilding that trust. And that's something that he has done tremendously throughout the offseason, continuing communication with the head coach, Pat Shurmur, and Dave Gettleman, the GM, being there during the offseason, making sure that when he was in California, he was in contact with Ronnie Barnes, who's the head trainer, in regards to his rehab. So he took all those steps. What else? Maturity, being a leader. Yeah. You know, one of the things that you saw out of him now during this offseason, even though it was a tabloid about somebody trying to extort him, he's cutting those people from his circle out because he knows that he has a vision that's larger than anybody else that's going to drag him down. And for the money aspect of it and what he does to this football team, he should be a Giant for life. He makes the offensive line and Eli Manning better because he can take a quick slant 60 yards. He makes the running back better because it takes a safety out of the box so you have one less guy. And he makes other wide receivers better because you can't bracket coverage only to him. It's going to get one-on-ones for everybody else. And when you think about that 2014 draft class that he was a part of, there were 12 wide receivers taken in the first 2 rounds. 10 of them already have restructured contracts and extensions. So it is definitely something that's going to get done. And when you think about the timing of it, when it came to Eli Manning, it was something that the Giants got done right before the end of training camp, right before the start of the regular season. I see that happening right now with him.
And listen, I agree with you on everything on the football field. He is a freak. He is a superstar. He is, he is somebody that you cannot put one guy on and expect to come out the victor if you're the defensive side of the football. But all of this goodwill, which he has earned because he has done the right things, okay, is like the last 2 or 3 months. Remember, it was this past offseason when he had a woman that he was in bed with, sending out pictures. There were drugs in the hotel room, or what looked like drugs in the hotel room. So it hasn't been all that long. And I guess my question to you, David, is, do you wait just because there's going to be something that goes wrong, and to see how he reacts? Jalen Ramsey, first week of the season, is going to be chattering to him.
Oh, yeah.
That defensive line of Jacksonville is going to be in Eli Manning's grill. How does he handle the first piece of adversity? Does he remain this version, Odell Beckham 2.0, or does he revert to the distraction of the past? That's my only question, because you are empowering so much of what he did that was a negative over the past couple of years if you give him a contract extension before he plays a game as the new Odell.
You know, when you talk about that and people trying to get under his skin, that happens to every wide receiver and everybody on the field. It's all about not responding in a way that's going to hurt your football team and going to cost you a football game because of getting a penalty. Let's go back to the Josh Norman situation when all this really started getting built up. It was a lose-lose situation for Odell Beckham Jr. If he fought him, people are going to say, oh, he's a jerk. What's he doing fighting on the field? If he didn't fight, they would have been, he's all talk. He doesn't back it up. So either way he went with that, it would have been a lose-lose for him. But when you think about him as the player, when you think about what he brings to this football team, and like you said, there are distractions off of the football field, it's because he's a blend of sports and entertainment we have not seen in a long time. The fact that he has those tabloids, the fact that he gets the amount of attention, and that any kid can recognize him is a sign of what type of football player he is. But having said all of that, you still have to handle yourself like a professional. You have to do things the right way. And I think that the signs that he showed and what he's been able to do with this organization with, like I said, John Mara, Pat Shurmur, Dave Gettleman, I believe that he deserves to get rewarded.
I get where you're coming from, because like you said, it's been 2 or 3 months of great team first, egoless behavior. But is that who he is? I'll just say this. If you're really not changed, then at some point he would have reverted. I know it's only 2 or 3 months, but I don't even know if some people can behave for 2 or 3 months without getting in trouble in some way, shape, or form.
He's not Pac-Man Jones, okay? He's not wilding out like that. My question is adversity. Adversity shows us who you really are. Let's see what happens if the Giants lose the first couple of games.
You're talking about a player who just sat out an entire season.
Yeah, I understand. There's another reason as to why you have to be like. I understand you're saying swallow hard and believe this is Odell Beckham Jr. and sign away. Like, remember, he wants the biggest contract in the history of the sport at this position.
Well, I think he should get like Antonio Brown money, $17 million a year. Yep. You know, the guarantee somewhere around Mike Evans and what Brown got.
Mike Evans got $50 million guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean,
okay, but people talk trash to Antonio Brown. Did Antonio Brown go crazy? Was he that much of a distraction?
I believe I've seen him throw a Gatorade tub on the sidelines. I believe him.
And you're talking about the one incident with Norman.
There's a multitude
in terms
of incidents.
of getting in like that on the field.
There's enough incidents with Odell Beckham Jr. with the kicking net.
Yeah, not do the trash talk, but just in general, no question about it.
It's the whole thing. Like, look, Eli comes on a weekly basis on New York radio, and you go back 2 years ago, and he and McAdoo have to answer questions, and they get a little bit perturbed about Odell Beckham Jr., right? Like, that's the coach and the quarterback having to constantly answer questions about Odell Beckham Jr. and being happy. And then Odell Beckham Jr., he was hurt coming in. He was hurt this past season. It's not his fault that he broke his ankle last year. That's part of the sport. My point is only, I don't think he's Pac-Man Jones, bad news, that it just follows him. Yeah. But there has been enough stuff there to which, don't you think you want to see some adversity? Like, dude, 2 months? Who can't be the nicest guy ever? When you got a contract,
some guys are so impulsive that they can't.
You're bringing up points that, number one, Eli Manning has already dealt with. You don't think inside the huddle Shockey was yelling for the football, or Plaxico Burress, or any receivers that come back, though? I was open. You were double coverage. You weren't open. They're open every single place. So that's something that takes place on numerous occasions. And you talked about Antonio Brown. Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, they're going into the Hall of Fame this weekend. Were they always the greatest teammates? Was there a perception about those players?
John
wide receiver is what it's called.
But John Merrick goes on local radio and said enough is enough. They were considering moving on from Odell Beckham Jr. Now, he has earned a ton of goodwill in the offseason, okay? But is a ton of goodwill after enough is enough and the video coming out? Does that mean you sign him to the biggest contract in the history of the sport of the position? That's my only question. The Giants are not forced to do anything. They don't have to do it other than if they don't want the distraction. I want to see how he reacts playing. Let me play a couple weeks and show me this is who you really are.
The adversity that you want to see would be if they don't give him that deal.
Oh, yeah.
How does he behave? Because that's the question. If he doesn't get or if he gets the deal, I think he would have a better year because he knows you believe in me.
Yep.
Now it's a partnership. Or does he go, like you said, and just go back to what he used to do?
If he gets a new contract, he will prove that he deserved every single dollar of it. I can guarantee you that.
Agree.
David, thank you so much.
Oh, it's always great being here.
This morning.
What better way to start a Friday?
Coming up, Draymond and Tristan aren't the only NBA players throwing punches. That's next on First Things First.
Used to throw punches.
I know. Back here on First Things First and on to the big story at Ohio State. The university has opened an investigation into Urban Meyer using a special independent board to run it. The football team has closed practice to the media and players are not doing interviews. To break it all down, we're joined now by Big Ten Network analyst, Coach Jerry DiNardo. Coach, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
First things first here, Coach, what was the reaction to this news within the Big Ten community?
Well, it was pretty shocking. We went through media days, and obviously it was a topic during media days. And I think we all left media days thinking that this could go one of two ways. And obviously, when it got worse, I don't know that any of us were really all that surprised. Anytime you're talking about this issue of domestic violence, we should have full transparency. Everybody should know. So I think we all knew that this might be the path we were going down.
Yeah, Coach, he seemed to back himself into a corner a little bit and offer up some kind of black and white opinions on the matter. Is that really what put him in this position? It's not as much maybe the story, or we still have to learn more about the story, but the fact that the Big Ten media days, when he responded to the firing of A.S.Smith, he kind of made some black and white remarks.
Doug, there's no doubt. I mean, when you're Urban Meyer, the head coach of Ohio State, national champion, the things that he's done, every single question, especially questions about this issue, you have to be measured. You have to know going into media days exactly what you're going to say, exactly how you want to handle it. There may have been a misstep there, but having said that, this can be corrected. Now, where they go at Urban Meyer, we have no control of, but the lesson that we all need to learn is if there was a mistake made at media days or prior to media days, we need to know what the mistake was, and we need to be told how we all can avoid the same mistake.
Jerry, how do you think this will affect the Ohio State players? Like, will this send them into a funk? Will it inspire them? Will it have no impact? What do you think?
Chris, I think it rocks their world. I mean, to think this doesn't have an impact, I think you'd have your head in the sand. Urban Meyer is a very strong, hands-on head football coach. He'll go down as one of the best head coaches in the history of college football. You don't all of a sudden take him out of the organization. Think of the experience. Think of the game day adjustments he's made, the recruiting adjustments he's made, day-to-day dealing with staff, day-to-day dealing with problems. He has a wealth of experience, and to take him out of a leadership role and put Ryan Day in a leadership role, someone who's never been a head coach, I'd say, Chris, that would rock everybody's world, especially young people.
So preseason polls, they're number 3. Do you think this pretty much takes them out of the championship hunt realistically?
No, I don't think the polls have anything to do with the championship hunt. I think you're going to play week to week in college football. Everyone sees you play now. There's no secrets. I think you could do without the preseason polls, and you wouldn't even know it going into a college football season. Now, whether they can play themselves like a number 3 team without Urban Meyer, that's questionable.
Coach, if they do end up moving on, do you expect the coaching change to come from within Ohio State, or do you think they may go outside?
Well, we know this, Sarah. We know that the administration, Gene Smith, thinks that Ryan Day is the most qualified inside the program. Even though Kevin Wilson and Greg Schiano were former head coaches on that staff, for some reason, Gene thought Ryan Day was the most qualified. So we know this. If they go inside, it's going to be Ryan Day. But every athletic director has a list of head coaches. This isn't the first time down this road for Ohio State. It's been Woody Hayes. It's been Earl Bruce. It's been Jim Tressel. It's been John Cooper. Every athletic director in the country, especially the one that sits in the athletic director's chair in Columbus, has a list. So he will compare Ryan Day's performance, perhaps, with the list. But obviously, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. But I understand that this is part of the discussion.
Coach, at your heart, you are a coach, and coaches have to learn from the past in order to be better in the future. If there's something that other coaches can learn from Urban's situation currently, what is it?
That there's a lot of things that are much more important than the game, and coaches are known for saying that we want to be involved in the players' lives, and we want to do more than just football, and it's more than just X's and O's. We go in the home, and one way to get to know a person intimately is to get in their home. And when we have an opportunity to teach a lesson about something like domestic violence, not only to maybe handle it wrong, but not to teach young people and everybody that's watching a lesson about something as important as that. I think that's what the coaches have to learn, Doug. There's no way that this wasn't a obviously unfortunate incident, but it could have been a tremendous learning experience. Instead, we're talking about how maybe it wasn't handled the right way. That's a misstep.
Well, Coach, we know this is a very delicate and fluid situation, so we certainly appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Chris Carter, Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolf. So long, everybody.